2019 was a wild year for fandom, starting off with Avengers Endgame and ending with Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, but there were plenty of crazy things that happened in between those two things. In this video at the start of 2020, I wanted to look back at 2019 and talk about the 5 biggest wins and the 5 biggest fails in fandom from last year. This video is brought to you by our executive producers via Patreon. What's up, everybody? It's Josh. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you had a good new year. Hope you're looking forward to 2020. But real quick, I wanted to take a look back at 2019. So I sat down yesterday. I talked to all of our executive producers here at the channel. I talked to Al. I talked to Ryan. I talked to Tara. I talked to The Godfather. I talked to Bill. And I talked to Alex. And together, we came up with a list of the 5 biggest wins in fandom in 2019 and the 5 biggest fails in fandom of 2019. So that's what this video is going to be about. I will start with the positives. I'll start with the wins, and then the back half of the video, we're going to get into the negative, and it was pretty wild with some of the negativity that happened in 2019. So get a soda, get a snack or something. This video is going to be lengthy. Now, I want to start with a couple honorable mentions that we couldn't quite figure out how to categorize. We couldn't figure out if they were big wins or big fails because they're actually a little bit of both, and they kind of point to this overall win for fandom that is something we should all be cognizant of, but also take with more responsibility moving forward in 2020. And these two things are the Sonic trailer for that Sonic movie and the Spider-Man arrangement where he was said to leave the MCU but then came back to the MCU. And the reason that so many of us brought this up and sort of talked about this as a win, maybe a loss, is because it really shows that fandom and the voice of fandom online has more power than ever before. I mean, with the Sonic trailer, that trailer came out and was memed and bullied so badly that the studio just took the L, went back, and totally fixed it, and now the Sonic movie looks like it's going to be much, much better. And similarly with Spider-Man, that was a bunch of suits and corporate things going on, but fans were so angry about it that it more or less forced both studios, with the help of Tom Holland, of course, to come back to the table and figure that out, because frankly, if you get the fans to turn on you, that is a super bad look. And so basically I wanted to do an honorable mention of those 2 wild things that happened in 2019 and just tell you that, guys, we as fans now have more power than we have ever had. But okay, let's get into the top 5 wins for fandom, the biggest, juicy, awesome things that happened in fandom in 2019, and an honorable mention here to the Jonathan Hickman X-Men comic books. Marvel Comics have had a lot of problems over the past couple of years. Their numbers have declined, and Jonathan Hickman coming back, resetting the X-Men, canceling all the X books, and then doing his story that then spun out into what the new X books would look like was a massive success. Huge numbers in physical sales, huge numbers in digital sales, a lot of interest out there on social media for these books. This was a huge win, but didn't quite make our top 5, so honorable mention to the Jonathan Hickman X-Men books. And coming into the number 5 spot was the Fox acquisition over at Marvel. Now, whether you're a business person or you're just someone that doesn't like monopolies, you could see this as a bad thing, but for us as fans, this was an incredible win. This was something that myself and pretty much all of the producers agreed was a big win for fandom because, I mean, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is just great, and to finally be getting the Fantastic Four properties and the X-Men back over at Marvel Studios, especially at a time when we are ending the first 3 phases and saying goodbye to a lot of our characters, was just simply perfect. So of course, the Fox acquisition over at Marvel Studios and by Disney comes in at our number 5 biggest win in fandom for 2019. Now, number 4 may surprise you, but it's actually The Boys, the series that came out on Amazon Prime, all about the Garth Ennis story about the boys, who were literally these characters that were fighting against these superheroes. It exists in a world where there are a lot of superheroes, and it's just part of society. And I was so happy that so many of the producers brought this up because I love this show. I thought it was such a breath of fresh air to the superhero genre, and again, at a time when the Fox acquisition happened, and maybe one of the things that's slightly negative about that is that we won't be getting more hard R, really pushing the limits superhero stuff. The Boys came out and blew us away. So The Boys, which if you haven't seen, you gotta go check it out. Season 2 is right around the corner. It was a huge win for fandom. Comes in at our number 4 spot of biggest wins in 2019. Number 3 probably won't surprise many of you, and this would be The Joker. And though I personally didn't love this film as much as most people did, I can't deny that this was a massive win for nerds and nerd culture everywhere. Not only was this a movie that was a much needed win for Warner Brothers and DC in general, but it turned in one of the best performances ever by an actor that was portraying a comic book character. The film will probably win some awards going into next year, and it's going to sort of elevate the status of the comic book genre and really show us what you can do within that genre when blending it with just classic filmmaking principles. And I mean, besides that, there's only one other producer that feels the same way that I do about the film. Most people absolutely love the Joker movie. It was a huge win for nerds. It comes in our number 3 biggest win in 2019. Now we're getting into the nitty gritty. Coming in at the number 2 spot for the biggest win in fandom in 2019, we have Baby Yoda and The Mandalorian. Now, Baby Yoda in and of itself is such a huge win for fandom and such a huge win for nerds, and the show combined with Baby Yoda's popularity is a massive win for Star Wars. There will be some Star Wars stuff in the biggest fails of 2019, but suffice it to say for now, things with Star Wars are not exactly going great. And at a time when there was a lot of stuff going wrong for Star Wars as a brand, Baby Yoda and The Mandalorian was a much needed and massive win. I mean, the memeability of Baby Yoda and how cute that character is and how universally loved the character is just kind of unseen. It's literally so big that that character is bringing people that wouldn't normally even give Star Wars the time of day. They're coming over and they're enjoying The Mandalorian. On top of that, the show in general is so dang good, and it's presented not only the first in a tradition of new series that will be going on Disney Plus for Star Wars, and it set the bar at a very nice place for those shows to at least meet and possibly exceed, but the show itself becomes sort of a farming place for potential new talent to direct Star Wars movies or other Star Wars properties. It might have even given us our new president of Lucasfilm if Jon Favreau does indeed take that position moving forward. So you cannot deny what a massive win Baby Yoda and The Mandalorian was for fandom in 2019. But of course, and it really shouldn't surprise anybody, that the number 1 biggest win in fandom in 2019 goes to Avengers Endgame. I mean, Avengers Endgame was such a cultural phenomenon. The popularity of that movie, the hype going into that film, the way that the ending satisfied so many different arcs for those characters is amazing. But if you even take a step back and just think about the fact that 10 years ago, comic book films were considered like a laughing stock and weren't really taken seriously, that you have Avengers Endgame possibly getting some award consideration, but more importantly, is literally the biggest film of all time. It surpassed Avatar. It's the biggest movie ever, and it's a freaking Avengers movie. Like, that is mind-blowing. If you would have told me that a decade ago, I would have laughed at you. I would have said there's no way a comic book movie would ever be the biggest movie on the planet, and it literally is. It's made more money than any other film. It also provided a majorly considered great ending to a 10-year run of movies, and it's just so wild that they were able to accomplish that in a way that satisfied so many people. And just in general, Avengers Endgame's ability to bring so many different people from so many walks of life and regions around the world and have them all feel this collective unity as they anticipated and experienced this film is a special thing. I was so grateful to be a part of it. I know many of you came to this channel on our ride towards Endgame with all the videos we were doing. It was great time for this channel as well. So, I mean, obviously to me, I think without a doubt, the biggest win in fandom in 2019 was Avengers Endgame. But now that we've spread a bunch of positivity and geeked out about all the awesome things, let's get some blood in the water. Let's get the sharks out, baby. Let's go to the dark side and let's talk about the biggest fails in fandom from 2019. And an honorable mention here goes out to all of the big video game properties that flopped and all of the trouble that big studios saw in the video game industry in 2019. Justin covered some of this over on the Den of Nerds Gaming, but big games like Anthem that were promised to be this revolutionary new live service game that put BioWare back on the map may have actually literally ended that studio. I mean, it technically isn't dead yet, but there's people leaving, a lot of resources going away. It was a huge loss. And similarly, when you look at something like Fallout 76, that was such a big loss that now Bethesda is looked at as a total laughingstock, and their mobile game that came out was a massive fail as well. And you know, one of the things I just wanted to mention is the fact that the video games industry is going through so many changes, and big studios are going to see collapses, and smaller studios that just provide great product and don't need the massive profit margins that things and companies like EA are used to, those companies will likely rise as a lot of these big studios collapse. And so basically, the massive shakeups that happened in 2019 were huge fails for fandom, but again, you could technically look at them as successes because they'll probably lead to a better video games industry moving forward. But coming in at the number 5 biggest fail of 2019, we had a lot of different answers coming in from the producers and, you know, just thoughts that I had. It all has to do with the lead up to Star Wars Episode 9. Now, whether it was the leaks, which happened way too early and were way too obvious when you compared what we were reading to what we saw in the promotion, or whether it was the terrible answers given by J.J. Abrams or Kathleen Kennedy leading up to this release, or whether it was the fact that the fandom could not get along and there was just so much shade and vitriol happening online. Whatever part of it you were talking about, basically the lead up to Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, particularly when you compare it to the lead up to Avengers Endgame, was devastating. It was a huge fail, and ultimately it is the responsibility of Disney, of Lucasfilm, and of Kathleen Kennedy to make sure that things like this don't happen. They have to use whatever they can to control the narrative. Obviously, they should not let out crazy leaks like this, and some of the answers given were just so boneheaded on the ride up that how could you not make negative content about what was going on with Star Wars? And frankly, I think most Star Wars fans are just grateful that we're past the sequel trilogy now and we can look forward to what happens next. And even if you're someone like myself that still likes the sequel trilogy, I mean, it's just not that great as a trilogy. I give it a C+, and that's being generous. So I would say the lead up to Star Wars Episode 9 definitely was a huge fail for fandom in 2019. Coming in at number 4 for the biggest fail or loss for fandom in 2019, I have, and many of the producers agree, the death of Stan Lee. Hey guys, it's Josh from the future, and I just realized that Stan Lee actually died very late in 2018, but because Stan Lee is so freaking awesome, I'm gonna leave this part in. Technically not a loss from 2019, a loss from late 2018, but still a hell of a loss. Now, the real sad part about this is that the end of his life was sort of filled with some controversy and even the possibility of him being taken advantage of by different people that were close to him. It was really tragic, and we all saw the decline of Stan Lee, but when he passed, it was super sad, man. Like, we had been seeing this guy in all the Marvel movies. He was just such a great spirit, man. Stood up for people, was always about unity, just a great dude, and it really did leave a hole in the hearts of many nerds out there when we lost Stan Lee in 2019. It's just tough, man. I mean, like, honestly, it's tough, and it's tough to even talk about because of some of the stuff that was happening with him at the end of his life. It's almost like we're grateful that he doesn't have to deal with that anymore, but it's still like so sad that we no longer have Stan around. So that's our number 4 spot for the biggest loss or fail in 2019. Now, number 3 probably won't surprise you, and this would all be the Brie Larson controversy. Holy crap, this was absolutely ridiculous, and there's a couple of different people to blame for how crazy this got. Number 1, of course, is Brie Larson. Now, I'm not one of those people that just is going to hold this over her head forever, but I'm not going to lie, the comments she made were incredibly boneheaded. And if you just look at what she was talking about in the context of what she was talking about, like, they were the most boneheaded comments you could probably make. They're the most tone-deaf comments you could make. And honestly, they did make me kind of not like her as a person. Every time I see her tweet, I'm like, can you just go away? But ultimately, it wasn't just Brie Larson that made the Brie Larson comments horrible. It was the bajillion YouTubers that figured out it was algorithm gold and made video after video after video talking about Brie Larson to the point where it's like exhausting, where it's like, even though I agree that her comments were boneheaded, the people making money off of that, like to the degree that they did, was so annoying annoying that I almost feel like rooting for Brie Larson now. You know what I mean? That's how crazy and ridiculous the situation with Brie Larson was. But whatever side of that you fall on, or however you felt about how it was handled, that's undoubtedly one of the biggest fails for fandom in 2019. And now we're into the nitty gritty, man. What made the top 2 biggest fails? Well, let's start with number 2. And this would be the absolute flop of Dark Phoenix. Everybody knew that the Fox X-Men were coming to a close. Everybody knew that Dark Phoenix was likely going to be the last major X-Men movie over at Fox before they went over to Marvel, and we expected and hoped for a very nice swan song. And instead, the film got delayed. It got panned by critics. It just seemed like even the cast and crew, when they were out talking about it, wasn't really taking it seriously. And at the end of the day, it flopped to a massive level. I mean, I didn't have any intent. I've still never seen that movie. I don't even know if it's good. I can tell you it probably is not, but I never even went to see that movie because of all the little things that added up to it. And it literally felt like Fox just being like, oh, screw it. Everyone will go see it anyways. And guess what? They were wrong, like epically wrong. Nobody wanted to go see that movie. We all knew that they phoned it in and were just trying to cash one last check. But the real irony of this is it actually ended up hurting Marvel because that was the first big movie that came out from Fox after that was acquired by Marvel. And so they literally come out and make this movie and it flops hardcore. So, you know, whatever side of that you're on, maybe there's some people out there that thought it wasn't that terrible. Either way, when it came to the reshoots, the way the actors conducted themselves, some of the things you were hearing about it behind the scenes, and just the marketing for the film was a total fail, and the second biggest fail for fandom in 2019. And the biggest, most undeniable fail for fandom in 2019 was, of course, the ending of Game of Thrones. I am sure there are some people out there that don't hate the ending for Game of Thrones, but it is almost universally considered one of the worst endings ever for a big series, and you're actually talking about the most popular show of all time. I mean, the last season was totally a hack job, completely squeezed together with fewer episodes than any season before. Plot points move past you at the speed of light. There's so many contrivances, and then the final episode is laughably bad. It's been memed to death. There's freaking water bottles, Starbucks cups. Like, it just felt like everybody that was working on that show completely checked out. Dan and Dave were apparently just working on Star Wars, which they never ended up doing anyways. But literally, the Game of Thrones ending was so bad that for me personally, I literally care zero about Game of Thrones. Like, I care this much. Zero. I don't care at all. If somebody tells me that the new series, the prequels or whatever, are like amazing, perhaps I'll go check them out. But I had purchases planned, like hot toys, different, like the Art of Ice and Fire books, all sorts of stuff. I was all in on Game of Thrones. I will literally never purchase anything for Game of Thrones ever again unless there's massive turnarounds for it. It's so boneheaded of an ending, and it's such a poorly executed last season that it feels like spitting in the face of all of these fans that literally made this show what it was. This show was the most popular show of all time, the biggest thing in fandom, and now it is literally devalued to the point where I'll never rewatch another episode of Game of Thrones. I just don't care. But that's it, boys and girls. That's me and all of the producers over here at the Den of Nerds looking back at 2019 and talking about what the biggest wins and the biggest losses were. Maybe you have some thoughts about this. You think things should be in a different order, or you have something that wasn't even on our list. Well, feel free to put that into the comment section below. That's what videos like this are for. But either way, I hope you enjoyed this piece of content. And again, I just want to say that this video is brought to you in part by all of the executive producers over at the Den of Nerds. These people, along with all of our Patreon supporters, just help us keep the lights on over here and make sure that despite weird changes with YouTube and crazy things going on with COPA and just ads, fluctuating wildly, that we have a base, a foundation, and that we can continue to bring this content to you guys. So to all of my executive producers, I love you guys. Thank you so much. And to all of the Patreon supporters, I love you guys. Thank you so much. And to everybody that's just been a part of this journey, watching the content this year, smashing like, sharing out the videos, thank you guys. And I love you so dang much. And as I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.